Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah?
Um, Today, we're going to be tackling something kind of heavy.
Yeah.
And, I think it's something that we all kind of think about, but maybe not as directly as we should, and that's aviation safety.
Yeah. Especially these days, it feels like.
Yeah, especially these days.
There are enough things to worry about
Right.
when you're traveling.
Exactly. And so this is something that's been in the news quite a bit lately.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought we would try to break it down. So we have an article here from Crooks and Liars. Trump desperately trying to shirk blame for air disaster. Strong words.
Strong words.
So we're going to try to unpack this a little bit,
Yeah.
and also take a look at a related tweet to this article. And we're going to try to figure out, what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this particular story is, we're not just talking about, a tragic event, and we'll get into the details of that, but the reaction to it and the kind of like finger pointing that's going on, it's very telling, I think.
Yeah, how much of this is genuine concern for safety,
Right.
and how much of it is deflecting blame?
Exactly.
And, it's interesting because it all happened on the same night that the FAA's top position was left vacant.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay, so already we're starting off in a
precarious situation.
precarious situation.
Yeah, we're talking about a midair collision here.
Oh my God.
So this
But
is this is a truly awful event.
Yeah, so that detail about the FAA just adds another
Another whole layer.
layer to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to make things even more, I don't know what the right word is here, complicated.
Yeah.
Former President Trump, back in office, holds this press conference, which sounds a little chaotic.
Yeah, I was reading about it, and there were some quotes in there that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, what happened at this press conference?
So he signs this memorandum, and this is where it gets really good. The title of the memorandum is Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety in Light of the Damage Done to Aviation Safety by the Biden Administration's DEI and Woke Policies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woof.
Heavy stuff.
So just for our listeners who may not be familiar with all of these terms, DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yes.
And, woke policies,
Yeah.
in this context.
It's a very loaded term these days.
It is a very loaded term.
Yeah.
And generally in this context, we're talking about things that, are aimed at social justice issues.
Yeah, I mean, essentially anything that is perceived as, left-leaning.
Right, exactly.
Or progressive.
And isn't there a little bit of irony here?
A little bit.
I mean, this collision happened under Trump's watch, not Biden's.
Yeah, this is exactly where we start to see the deflection tactics coming into play.
So can you sort of explain that to our listeners in terms of like deflecting blame and deflection tactics?
Yeah. Yeah, when leaders face a crisis like this, and especially one that is maybe unexpected and has drawn a lot of public attention,
Right.
There's this rush to be seen as taking action. You
Yeah.
want to be seen as doing something, and
Like you're in control.
yeah, exactly. Like you're on top of it, and sometimes that can lead to, pointing fingers in other places, maybe, trying to shift the focus away from your own potential culpability.
Okay.
And so that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing here.
So digging into the memo a little bit more.
Yeah.
What exactly is Trump calling for here?
Well, basically, he's ordering the Secretary of Transportation and the acting head of the FAA
Right.
to, undo any damage that they perceive to have been done by the previous administration's policies, especially related to these things we were just talking about, the DEI and woke initiatives. And they're also tasked with evaluating, how extensive this supposed damage is, and then also ensuring that only the most competent individuals are hired by the FAA going forward.
Interesting. So there's this emphasis on competence over everything that we're seeing.
Yeah, and they repeated that many times in the press conference.
Right. Right. On the surface, it sounds great. I mean, who wouldn't want to prioritize competence when we're talking about aviation safety?
Absolutely.
But is that truly the driving force behind this memo? Or could there be more to it?
Right, and that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the timing of it and the specific wording and the people who are involved, it suggests that there might be something else going on here.
So let's start with the people then.
Okay.
Who is in charge of implementing all of these changes that are being called for?
Well, the newly appointed Secretary of Transportation is Sean Duffy,
Right.
Former Fox News host,
Of course.
and a very staunch Trump loyalist.
Yes. He's been in the news quite a bit lately.
Hmm.
And something that I noticed is that he has absolutely no prior experience in transportation.
Yeah, that was something that stood out to me as well.
So how does somebody with zero relevant experience suddenly get put in charge of such a critical area, especially after a major incident like this?
It's definitely raised some eyebrows.
Yeah.
And there have also been some rumblings about his potential ties to Elon Musk
Oh, really?
and some of his ventures.
Okay.
So that adds another layer of intrigue to this whole appointment.
That is fascinating, and we'll definitely have to unpack that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But going back to this emphasis on competence, Trump's making that like a central point of this whole message.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, he left the FAA's top official position unfilled on the very night of this collision.
Mm.
And let's not forget,
Oh, there's more.
he fired the administrator of the Transportation and Security Administration,
Right.
and he also dismantled a pretty crucial aviation security advisory group.
Right.
I mean, that seems like a very blatant contradiction.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you're saying we need competence,
Right.
but then you're getting rid of all these people.
The people who provide the competence.
Exactly. And the agencies,
The experts.
yeah, it makes you wonder if this is really about safety or if this is more about deflecting blame and pushing a specific agenda. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we also have this tweet from Aaron Rupar that we wanted to look at.
Right.
And I think it really kind of sums up a lot of the skepticism that people are feeling about this.
Okay.
He called out Trump for signing this order, blaming Biden and DEI for these flight dangers, and he labeled it as insanity.
Yeah, I think that tweet really kind of sums up, like I was saying earlier, the skepticism that a lot of people are feeling about this.
Yeah.
It feels like it's not really about addressing the actual causes of this tragedy. It feels more like scoring political points.
Exactly. And so I think the big question for us today is how do we separate, a genuine concern for safety
Right.
from political maneuvering
Right.
and deflection tactics?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're going to continue to explore as we kind of go through this today. So let's shift gears for a moment and talk about this connection between Sean Duffy and Elon Musk. What are the concerns there? What does that tell us potentially about Trump's motives? And we'll be back right after this to unpack all of that.
So you might be wondering why people are connecting this new transportation secretary with Elon Musk. And it really comes down to the kinds of projects that Musk is known for championing.
Right.
Things like self-driving cars, Hyperloop systems, even ventures related to space travel infrastructure.
So the concern is that somebody who's closely tied to Musk might be more inclined to relax safety regulations in order to help those ventures succeed.
Exactly. That's the worry that a lot of critics are voicing. Now, we're not saying that that's definitively what's happening here, but it's a question worth asking,
Right.
You've got someone with strong ties to a specific industry, and suddenly they're put in charge of regulating that very industry.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they have no prior experience in this area.
Right.
So it's natural for some red flags to pop up.
It really makes you wonder about these political appointments and the decision-making that goes into them. How often are these choices really based on a candidate's expertise and qualifications
Right.
versus their loyalty or their alignment with a particular agenda?
It's a complicated issue for sure, and the answer isn't always clear-cut. There are certainly cases where highly qualified individuals are appointed based on their merit, but we can't ignore the influence of political considerations. And it's no secret that certain administrations like Trump's tend to place a very high value on loyalty.
So what are the potential consequences of that kind of approach, especially when it comes to something like aviation safety where the stakes are so high?
Well, think about it this way. When you prioritize those personal connections or political agendas over actual experience and expertise, you risk compromising the effectiveness and integrity of these really critical agencies.
Right.
And when we're talking about aviation safety, those compromises could mean overlooking potential hazards or delaying important upgrades, or even making decisions that put the lives of passengers at risk.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
It really makes you question how sincere Trump is being when he talks about competence. I mean, if he was truly concerned about having the most capable people in these positions, wouldn't he have taken steps to keep a strong and independent team of experts in place?
Right.
Like, you could have kept that Aviation Security Advisory Committee intact.
Right.
Or at least made sure that the FAA had, qualified leadership.
Yeah, those are definitely valid points. And they become even more pressing when you consider the actions that the Trump administration has taken.
Right.
Especially when it comes to aviation safety.
Yeah, you're talking about things like dismantling that advisory committee.
Exactly. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. Why would anyone get rid of a group that's specifically designed to make air travel safer?
Well, it was a controversial move, to say the least. This Aviation Security Advisory Committee, ASAC,
Okay.
it was made up of experts from various fields, pilots, engineers, security specialists.
Right.
And they would provide independent recommendations and advice on how to keep air travel safe.
Right.
And so when it was dismantled back in 2024, it raised a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah, I remember that.
And people are still kind of speculating about the motivations behind that decision.
What are some of the theories that were floating around at the time?
Well, some people believe that the committee was disbanded because it was seen as too critical of the Trump administration's policies. And there was this perception that maybe their recommendations were too woke,
right,
or that they didn't align with the administration's priorities.
Right.
Others suggested that maybe Trump just didn't see the value in having this kind of advisory group, or that he wanted to have more direct control over these matters.
So essentially, you've got this situation where you have a group of independent experts, and they are removed from the equation. The top position at the FAA is vacant. And then, when something like this midair collision happens, the blame immediately gets shifted to the previous administration and their approach to things like diversity and social justice.
It's quite a shift.
Yeah. What message does that send?
Well, it definitely raises some serious concerns about whether the real focus here is on actually improving safety or if there are other agendas at play.
Right.
You have to ask yourself, are these actions genuinely aimed at addressing the root cause of this problem? Or are they more about deflecting blame and controlling the narrative?
It seems like we're seeing this pattern where anytime there's criticism or any kind of accountability, the immediate reaction is to deflect, to distract, to point fingers elsewhere.
Right. It's class.
And it's something that, politicians have been doing forever.
Yeah.
But in a context like aviation safety, where lives are literally on the line, it's just extremely alarming.
It really highlights, I think, why it's so important for us as citizens to be aware of these tactics,
right,
so that we can, cut through the noise and demand that our leaders actually prioritize safety over political maneuvering.
You've mentioned this idea of holding our leaders accountable a few times now.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What does that look like in practice?
So when we talk about holding leaders accountable, what does that actually look like? How do we do that?
Yeah, like what are some actionable steps that people can take?
Well, I think it starts with staying informed. We can't just passively accept whatever narratives are being pushed by politicians or media outlets.
Right.
We need to dig a little deeper, seek out multiple perspectives, really critically evaluate the information that we're consuming.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's so much information out there. It can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
Right. Well, I always say start by looking for sources that are known for their credibility and their commitment to fact-checking.
Okay.
Don't just rely on social media or partisan news outlets. Look for reputable organizations that have a history of, unbiased reporting.
So once we've done our research and we've kind of formed our own opinions, what then? What's the next step?
Well, then it's all about civic engagement, making your voice heard. Contact your elected officials, let them know what your concerns are,
right,
and demand that they prioritize safety over politics.
It's so easy to feel like our individual voices don't really make a difference.
Yeah.
Especially when you're up against these huge, powerful political forces.
Right.
Do you really think that we can have an impact?
I absolutely do. I think that our voices collectively have immense power.
Okay.
And when we speak up, when we demand better, when we refuse to be complacent, it forces those in power to listen. And it can really shape the narrative, influence policy and ensure that critical issues like aviation safety are not sacrificed for political expediency.
Yeah, I love that. So to kind of bring this all back to the beginning, this deep dive, it wasn't just about, this tragic accident.
Yeah. Right.
It was really about trying to understand how these kinds of events can be used for political gain and how important it is for us to stay vigilant and to hold our leaders accountable.
And it's a reminder that we as citizens have a role to play in all of this, in ensuring that our safety, whether it's in the skies or anywhere else, is never a compromise for political convenience.
So to all of our listeners out there, we leave you with this. Do your own research. Ask tough questions, and don't let those in power get away with sacrificing safety for political gain. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.